There is breaking news tonight, a development that adds another profound layer of mystery to the ongoing saga in our cosmic neighbourhood. A new rogue object has been discovered, a celestial wanderer hurtling through the inner solar system. Its position is what makes this so immediately startling, so incredibly significant. It has been found directly, almost precisely, in the space between the interstellar object 3I Atlas and our own planet Earth. This object has been officially designated C2025 V1 Borosov, and the story of its discovery is just as remarkable as its location. It was first observed by Gennady Borosov of Crimea. If that name sounds familiar to you, it should. This is the very same individual, the same sharp-eyed astronomer, who first spotted the second ever confirmed interstellar object, E. Borosov. It feels like a twist of fate, a cosmic echo, that the same person would be the one to find this new object, which now shares a part of their name. It's a testament to dedication, and perhaps a little bit of cosmic serendipity. The universe, it seems, has a flair for the dramatic, choosing its messengers with a sense of poetry. Now let's talk about the object itself, because this is where the anomalies begin to pile up, creating a puzzle that is both frustrating and deeply fascinating. Just like the enigmatic 3I Atlas, this new arrival, C2025 V1 Borosov, does not appear to have a tail. This is a critical detail. For an object classified as a comet, the absence of a tail, especially as it gets closer to the Sun, is a major red flag. It defies our fundamental understanding of what a comet is and how it should behave when subjected to solar radiation. To be clear, the data is still coming in, and there are some conflicting reports, which only adds to the intrigue. The vast majority of observations, the overwhelming consensus from astronomers around the world, show only a coma. A coma is that fuzzy, glowing halo of gas and dust that forms around a comet's nucleus as it heats up. But the tail, that long, iconic streamer of material pushed away by the solar wind, is conspicuously absent in most images and reports. However, there are a couple of outliers. Out of all the official observations logged so far, a small handful, precisely 2, have detected some form of a tail. This discrepancy is itself a point of investigation. Are these 2 observations detecting something real that others are missing, perhaps due to equipment sensitivity or atmospheric conditions? Or are they misinterpretations of the data, an illusion created by the way the light from the coma is scattering? The fact that we even have to ask these questions highlights just how unusual this object is. Another key piece of information is its current position relative to the Sun. C2025 V1 Borosov is actually closer to our star right now than 3I Atlas is. This makes the lack of a tail even more bizarre. In theory, being closer to the Sun means it's being exposed to more intense heat and a stronger solar wind. This should be the prime condition for outgassing, for the sublimation of ices that creates a brilliant visible tail. Yet, for the most part, we see nothing of the sort. It's a celestial contradiction playing out right before our eyes. And while this new drama unfolds, we're also getting our first real look at 3I Atlas, after its own intense trial by fire. We have new imagery of the interstellar object post-perihelion. Perihelion, for those unfamiliar with the term, is the point in an object's orbit where it is closest to the Sun. It is the moment of maximum exposure, the peak of its fiery encounter with our star. And 3I Atlas has been through an absolute barrage. Since its superior conjunction on October 21st, where it passed behind the Sun from our perspective, it has been blasted by a relentless series of solar storms. Imagine powerful waves of charged particles and magnetic fields, known as coronal mass ejections, washing over it again and again. On top of that, during its perihelion passage, it was subjected to a massive, unrelenting dose of light radiation. The sheer amount of energy directed at this object has been astronomical. And yet, the fundamental anomaly persists. Even with all of that intense solar interaction, all that provocation from our star, 3I Atlas, has not developed an obvious tail. This behaviour is more than just unusual. It is, to use the word of many astronomers studying it, very bizarre. It challenges our models of cometary physics and forces us to consider that this object is made of something far more resilient, far less volatile, than a typical ball of ice and rock. It holds its secrets close, refusing to reveal its true nature even under the most extreme pressure. In the midst of this, we have also seen a long-awaited release of data from an international partner. China's space agency, the CNSA, has finally released their imagery of Three-Eye Atlas. These images were captured by their Tianwen probe, which is currently in orbit around Mars. The pictures themselves were taken back in early October, but they have been held for analysis until now. The release was met with a mix of excitement and, frankly, a bit of disappointment. The assessment from the scientific community has been blunt. The images are of very low resolution. They are pixely, lacking the sharp detail needed for any serious scientific characterization. While it's valuable to have another set of eyes on the object from a different vantage point in the solar system, these particular images don't do much to solve the central mysteries. They confirm its presence and its brightness, but they don't give us the clues we so desperately need about its shape, its surface, or the reasons for its strange behaviour. So, with China's data now on the table, we're still waiting for what many consider to be the most crucial upcoming datasets. We are waiting for NASA. Specifically, we are anticipating the release of Imagery from the HiRISE camera, a powerful instrument aboard the Mars Reconnaissance Orbiter. This is a high-resolution camera that could potentially give us an unprecedented look at Three-Eye Atlas. We are also, to a lesser extent, waiting on data from the United Arab Emirates and their own Mars mission, though the expected quality of their images remains an unknown quantity. The situation, as it stands today, is one of escalating mystery. We have a new rogue object, currently classified as a comet, that has appeared as if from nowhere, positioning itself directly between Three-Eye Atlas and the Earth. It shares the same confounding characteristic of a missing tail. It is on a trajectory that will bring it to its own perihelion, its own closest approach to the Sun, in the middle of November, assuming it holds to its calculated path. And all the while, the original interstellar enigma, Three-Eye Atlas, continues its journey out of our solar system, still brighter than it should be, still defying all our expectations and leaving a trail of profound questions in its wake. Let's try to visualize this complex celestial dance. To do that, we can turn to a powerful tool, a 3D solar system visualization, provided by the website The Sky Live. This allows us to see the architecture of our solar system in real time and plot the courses of these fascinating visitors. For our analysis, we have three key objects plotted, each with its own unique story and trajectory. First and foremost, of course, is Three-Eye Atlas. We can see its path clearly marked, a dramatic sweeping arc cutting through the plane of our solar system. This is what's known as a hyperbolic trajectory. Unlike the planets, which follow closed, elliptical orbits, Three-Eye Atlas is on an open path. It came in from the vastness of interstellar space. It is making a single gravitational slingshot maneuver around our Sun, and it will then be flung back out into the void, never to return. Its path is a testament to its origin from beyond our solar family. Next, we have plotted the path of the newcomer, C2025 V1 Borosov. Its trajectory is also distinct, a sharp line moving through the inner solar system, showing its own journey towards the Sun. And finally, for context and comparison, we have also plotted a third object, another comet named C2025 V1 Atlas. It's important to keep these names straight, as the Atlas designation comes from the survey system that discovered it, and it's not uncommon for multiple objects to share part of a name. From our vantage point here on Earth, something remarkable is happening in our night sky. All three of these objects, despite being at vastly different distances, appear relatively close together. They are clustered in a specific region of the celestial sphere, creating a focal point of intense astronomical interest. It's as if the cosmos has decided to stage a play in one particular corner of the sky, and we have front row seats. Let's take a moment to profile each of these three key actors in our cosmic drama. First, there is C2025 V1 Atlas. This object serves as a useful baseline, a sort of control group in our investigation. It is an unusual comet, but it is still recognizably a comet. Crucially, it does possess a tail, behaving more or less as our theories predict. What makes it unique is a distinct visual feature. It glows with an uncommon golden yellowish colour. This is likely due to the specific chemical composition of the dust and gas in its coma and tail, perhaps a higher concentration of sodium atoms. Currently, if you were to look for it with a powerful telescope, you would find it in the constellation of Leo, the lion. Then we have our new mystery, C2025 V1 Borosov. Its celestial location is right next door to its interstellar cousin. It can be found in the constellation of Virgo, the Maiden. Its proximity in the sky to Three-Eye Atlas is no coincidence. It reflects their current alignment in three-dimensional space, a detail we will explore more deeply in a moment. And finally, there is Three-Eye Atlas itself, the star of this interstellar show. It too resides in the constellation of Virgo, appearing as a faint point of light moving slowly against the backdrop of distant stars. The fact that these two anomalous, tailless objects are neighbours in our sky is the visual manifestation of the incredible alignment that is currently taking shape. This brings us to what is perhaps the most intriguing event on the immediate horizon, an impending celestial alignment. The timeline for this event is incredibly soon. From our reference date of November 6th, this alignment is set to occur in just 2 days. It is a moment of geometric precision, a fleeting arrangement of cosmic bodies that feels almost too perfect to be a mere coincidence. The participants in this alignment are our own planet, Earth, the newly discovered C2025 V1 Borosov, and the interstellar object Three-Eye Atlas. For a brief period, these three bodies will form a nearly straight line in space. It's a syzygy, a celestial lineup that connects our world directly to these two profound mysteries. To add another layer of detail, we need to consider the orbital planes. Our solar system is relatively flat, with most planets orbiting the Sun on or near a single disk known as the ecliptic plane. During this specific alignment, C2025 V1 Borosov will be positioned slightly above this plane. So, while the alignment in the two-dimensional view from above the solar system is nearly perfect, in 3 dimensions there is a slight vertical separation. The significance of this event is open to interpretation, but it is being described by many in the astronomical community as a very interesting alignment. For scientists, it presents a unique opportunity for observation. When objects line up, it can allow for specialized measurements and can sometimes reveal subtle gravitational effects. For those who look for deeper meaning in the cosmos, it feels like a moment of punctuation, a cosmic exclamation point emphasizing the connection between these enigmatic visitors and ourselves. Now, let's take a much deeper dive into the specifics of this newcomer, C2025 V1 Borosov. What do we really know about it so far? The very first detections of this object came in around November 3rd. It appeared suddenly in the data from sky surveys, a faint moving point of light that hadn't been there before. As is standard practice, before it received its official cometary designation, it was given a temporary internal label. This initial designation was GBAZSU. This is a useful piece of information for anyone wanting to do their own research, especially in these early days. If you search astronomical databases or archives, you may find more initial reports and observations filed under GBA0 than under its new official name. Over time, all the data will be consolidated under C2025 V1 Borosov, but for now, knowing both names is key to getting the full picture. The object's path is quite dramatic. It is on a trajectory that is shooting upwards from below the ecliptic plane. Imagine the flat disk of our solar system. This object approached from underneath that disk and is now crossing through it, heading upwards into the northern celestial hemisphere. This kind of inclined orbit is not uncommon for comets, especially those coming from the Oort cloud, the distant reservoir of icy bodies that surrounds our solar system. However, for a new object appearing so suddenly in the inner solar system, every detail of its path is scrutinized. Let's look more closely at its perihelion, its upcoming close encounter with the Sun. According to the current orbital calculations, the date of its closest approach is projected to be November the 16th. This is just around the corner, which means we're about to see how this object truly responds to the full force of our star. Will it finally develop a tail? Will it brighten significantly? Will it fragment? These are the questions that will hopefully be answered in the coming weeks. We can also predict its position in space at the moment of perihelion. On November 16th, it will be very close to the Sun, as expected. It will also be significantly above the ecliptic plane, having completed its upward crossing. And most interestingly, at that precise moment, it will be in a rough alignment with the Earth. Our planet, the Sun, and C2025 V1 Borosov will form another one of these fascinating celestial lines. This particular alignment has significant implications, not just for observation, but potentially for the energetic environment of our entire inner solar system. This leads us directly to a broader and incredibly important topic: the connection between these celestial visitors and the activity of our own Sun, which in turn has a direct impact on Earth. There is a growing body of research and a compelling hypothesis that suggests the intense solar flare activity we've been witnessing is not random. It seems to be connected to these very alignments. Recently, the sunspots on the Earth-facing side of the Sun have been incredibly active. These are massive, magnetically complex regions on the solar surface that are the launch pads for solar flares and coronal mass ejections. We've seen a flurry of activity from them, sending waves of energy and particles out into the solar system. One theory attempts to explain the directionality of these eruptions. This theory revolves around an alignment with another comet, one we've discussed before, named A6 Lemon. The idea is that an electrical or magnetic connection can form between a comet and the Sun, and this connection can influence where and when solar activity occurs. As it happens, during this recent period of high activity, from November 5th to the 6th, the active sunspot regions on the Sun were pointing directly at the location of comet A6 Lemon. It's a correlation that is too precise for many to dismiss as mere chance. Now, we can use this same framework to make projections about future solar activity. Let's look ahead to November 16th, the date of C2025 V1 Borosov's perihelion. On that day, as we've established, Borosov will be in alignment with the Sun and the Earth. The Sun rotates on its axis roughly once every 27 days. By November 16th, that same highly active sunspot region will have rotated around to be facing this new alignment zone. The implication is powerful. This series of sequential alignments, first with A6 Lemon and then with C2025 V1 Borosov, may be the mechanism that is sustaining this period of high solar activity. It's as if the Sun is being triggered, first by one object and then by another, to continue releasing these powerful bursts of energy. This could mean we are in for an extended period of intense space weather, driven by this cosmic billiard game being played out in our solar system. This isn't just an abstract astronomical event, it has real, tangible effects here on Earth. We're already seeing the impact on our planet's geomagnetic field. Just recently, Earth experienced a G3 level geomagnetic storm. The scale for these storms goes from G1, which is minor, up to G5, which is extreme. A G3 storm is considered strong and can cause problems for power grids, satellite operations and radio communications, while also producing spectacular auroras visible at much lower latitudes than usual, and it was a close call for an even bigger event. Just last night, we narrowly avoided what was forecast to be an even stronger storm. A massive cloud of plasma from the Sun passed just ahead of Earth's orbit, missing us by a relatively small margin in cosmic terms. The threat, however, is not over. The forecast from space weather agencies predicts that a strong to potentially severe storm, a G3 or G4 event, is expected to impact Earth within the next 12 hours or so. We are on high alert. The sustaining factor in all of this could very well be the new arrival. The presence of C2025 V1 Borosov, now travelling deep inside the orbit of Venus, incredibly close to the Sun, may be acting as a continual catalyst. Its proximity to the Sun could be keeping the local interplanetary magnetic field stirred up, providing the conditions necessary for these energetic events to continue. We are not just passive observers of these comets, we are living inside the dynamic energetic system that they are actively influencing. Let's return to the central anomaly of C2025 V1 Borosov and examine the evidence for its lack of a tail more closely. We have to be rigorous, like detectives at a crime scene, looking at every piece of data to understand what is really going on. The visual evidence is the most compelling place to start. One of the best early images comes from an observer who goes by the name Alpha Rats on the social media platform X, formerly known as Twitter. This image is not just a simple snapshot. It was created using a sophisticated technique known as image stacking. The observer took multiple long exposure images of the object over a period of time. Because the object is moving against the background stars, if you simply layered the images, both the object and the stars would be blurred. The technique used here is to digitally center the object, V1 Borosov, in every single frame before stacking them. The result is that the object itself becomes sharp and clear, a composite of all the light gathered over time. The background stars, because they were in different positions in each frame relative to the moving object, are smeared out into long streaks. This is a hallmark of an image that has been processed to prioritize a moving target. And what does this carefully processed image show? It reveals a small fuzzy coma, that glowing cloud of gas and dust immediately surrounding the object's core. The nucleus itself, the solid body of the object, is too small and faint to be visible. But what is glaringly obvious is what is missing. There is no discernible, obvious tail streaming away from the coma. You might, if you stretch your interpretation, see a very slight elongation in one direction, but it is faint, ambiguous, and a far cry from the prominent tail we would expect from a comet this close to the Sun. We can look at another image, this one taken on November 3rd and filed under the object's original designation, GB007. The conclusion is the same. This image, also a composite of stacked exposures, shows the object as a small condensed point of light surrounded by a faint haze. Once again, there is absolutely, certainly no tail in this image here. The visual evidence from multiple independent observers using proper techniques is consistent. This object is not behaving like a standard comet. Beyond these images, we can turn to the official, tabulated observational data. This is compiled in what's known as a Minor Planet Electronic, Circular, or MPEC, which is published by the International Astronomical Union, the governing body for astronomy. This document is a summary of all the initial reports from observatories and astronomers around the world who have pointed their telescopes at this new object. In total, the Circular logs 10 official observations. It's a small number, but this is a very new discovery. The summary of these reports is telling. The very first report from the discoverer Borosov himself, a highly experienced observer with excellent equipment, did not detect a tail. He noted the coma, but no tail. This is a significant starting point. As we go down the list of the 10 observations, the pattern continues. Most observers are simply not picking up a tail. The conflicting reports that we mentioned earlier come from the 4th and 5th observers on this list. These are the only two who noted the presence of a tail. This is where we need to look at the numbers, because the details reveal further inconsistencies. The first of these two observers measured the coma's size at 40 arcseconds across. An arcsecond is a tiny unit of angular measurement used in astronomy. There are 3,600 arcseconds in a single degree of the sky. This observer then reported a tail length of 50 arcseconds, so the tail was reported as being just slightly longer than the coma was wide. Now let's look at the second observer who reported a tail. They measured the coma as being significantly smaller, only 23.4 arcseconds across, but they reported a tail length that was much longer, at 72 arcseconds. The discrepancy here is huge. One observer sees a large coma and a relatively short tail. The other sees a small coma and a much longer tail. These measurements are not consistent with each other, which casts doubt on what is actually being seen. It's possible they are detecting a very faint transient feature, or that it's an artifact of their specific processing. The bottom line is this. The overwhelming consensus, backed by 8 out of the 10 official reports and the best available imagery, is that C2025 V1 Borosov does not have a significant, well-defined tail. The evidence for a tail is scant, inconsistent, and comes from a small minority of observations. The mystery, therefore, remains firmly in place. We can also look at the object's brightness profile. Brightness, or apparent magnitude, is a crucial clue to an object's size, composition, and activity level. In astronomy, the magnitude scale is counterintuitive. Lower numbers mean brighter objects. The brightest stars in our sky have magnitudes around 0 or 1, while the faintest objects visible with the naked eye are around magnitude 6. Currently, C2025 V1 Borosov has an apparent magnitude in the range of 12 to 14. This is quite faint, far too dim to be seen with the naked eye or even with binoculars. You need a decent-sized telescope to spot it. As it gets closer to the Sun for its perihelion on November 16th, it is expected to brighten. The heat from the Sun will cause more material to sublimate from its surface, creating a larger, more reflective coma, which should increase its brightness. How much it brightens will be a key test of its nature. This brings us to a critical comparative analysis, a juxtaposition of our two mysterious visitors. We must place the mystery of C2025 V1 Borosov alongside the ongoing, and perhaps even deeper, mysteries of 3I Atlas. Let's begin with the brightness anomaly of 3I Atlas, because it is truly remarkable. we can track its brightness over time using what's called a light curve. This is a simple graph that plots the object's apparent magnitude on one axis and time on the other. When we look at the light curve for 3I Atlas, we see a clear and dramatic story. In the early days of its observation, back in July and August, its brightness was tracking fairly close to predictions. The orange line on these graphs represents the simple fit line, which is the expected brightness based on a simple model of a rocky body reflecting sunlight, getting brighter only as it gets closer to the Sun and the Earth. But then, in early September, something changed. The object started to brighten significantly, rising well above that simple fit line. It was becoming intrinsically more luminous, not just reflecting more light. This is typically a sign of cometary activity, of outgassing creating a larger, more reflective coma. This trend continued, and it was even confirmed during the period of its solar conjunction, when it was invisible to ground-based telescopes. During that time, it was monitored by specialized solar observatories like the CCR-1 and C3 coronagraphs aboard the SOHO spacecraft, and by NASA's new Punch constellation of satellites. These instruments are designed to look at the faint corona of the Sun, and in doing so they were able to track 3I Atlas as it passed through their field of view. Their data confirmed that the brightening was not only continuing but accelerating. Now, post-perihelion, we have new measurements, and they are stunning. The latest confirmed value for the apparent magnitude of 3I Atlas is 9.8. This is significantly brighter than it has any right to be. Let's put that number in context. The expected magnitude, based on the simple fit model, was 11.2. The difference between 9.8 and 11.2 is 1.4 magnitudes. I need to be very clear about what this means, because the magnitude scale is logarithmic, not linear. A difference of one full magnitude corresponds to a brightness difference of about 2.5 times. So, a difference of 1.4 magnitudes means that 3I Atlas is currently shining more than 2.54 times brighter than our baseline models predicted. It is overachieving in the brightness department by a huge margin. This leads us to its physical and compositional characteristics, which are a bundle of contradictions. The object did display some degree of what's called non-gravitational acceleration, or NGA. This is a tiny deviation from its purely gravity-defined orbit. When we see NGA in a comet, we typically assume it's caused by the rocket-like effect of jets of gas erupting from its surface as it heats up. This off-gassing pushes the comet slightly off course, so on the one hand we have this excess brightening and some NGA, both of which point towards active outgassing, the classic behavior of a comet. However, the latest calculations from NASA, released just a day ago on November 5th, have refined the orbit and show that the NGA was actually less than originally thought. It's there, but it's a very subtle effect, perhaps not enough to account for the massive increase in brightness. And this brings us back to the central contradiction, the lack of a tail. If it's outgassing enough material to become 2.5 times brighter than expected, where is all that material? It should be forming a magnificent tail, pushed back by the solar wind. But we don't see one. This strongly suggests that whatever is making it brighter is not the typical sublimation of water ice. This has led to inferences about its composition. The lack of a tail points towards a body made primarily of non-volatile materials, substances that don't easily turn into gas when heated. This could include rocky or metallic minerals, pure metals, and a significant amount of carbon. Spectroscopic analysis has indeed detected a lot of carbon in its vicinity, along with some trace amounts of water and ice. But the dominant signature seems to be that of a dark, rocky, carbonaceous body. Now, let's place 3I Atlas and C2025 V1 Borosov side by side. The juxtaposition is what makes this story so compelling. The key distinction is that 3I Atlas is currently further away from the Sun than V1 Borosov, yet it is significantly brighter. 3I Atlas is a magnitude 9.8 object, while Borosov is down at magnitude 12 to 14. This is a huge difference in brightness, and yet they share the same core mystery. Both objects, to the best of our current observational ability, appear to lack a substantial tail, a direct contradiction of what we expect from objects classified as comets, especially given their proximity to the Sun. One is an interstellar visitor, large and anomalously bright. The other is a newcomer of unknown origin, smaller, dimmer, and positioned like a stepping stone between the first object and our own world. This is the point where we must allow ourselves to engage in some speculation, to explore the more extraordinary possibilities. This is not to say that these are the most likely explanations, but in the face of such profound and stacking anomalies, we have a scientific and philosophical duty to consider all hypotheses. The alien probe hypothesis, once the realm of science fiction, is now being discussed with increasing seriousness in mainstream astronomical circles, championed by figures like Harvard astronomer Avi Loeb. The core idea is that we need to apply a new lens to these interstellar objects. We cannot simply default to the assumption that every visitor from another star system is a natural comet or asteroid. We must be open to the possibility that some of them could be technological in origin. This is the principle of being prepared, of not being caught by surprise by what the universe might send our way. So let's run a thought experiment. Let's entertain the scenario that 3I Atlas is not a comet. What if it were, for the sake of argument, a mothership, an interstellar probe designed to travel between stars and explore interesting planetary systems? Such a craft would likely need to deploy smaller secondary probes to get a closer look at specific targets, like a promising planet such as Earth. Now look at the connecting evidence we have just laid out. An anomalously bright, tailless interstellar object makes a close pass of our Sun. Then, just as it is heading away, a new, smaller, dimmer object suddenly appears, as if out of nowhere, on a trajectory that places it directly between the first object and Earth. This new object shares the same primary anomaly of a missing tail. Its characteristics, smaller, dimmer, less active, fit the potential profile of such a deployed probe perfectly. I want to be absolutely clear. This is not proof. It is not a conclusion. It is the connecting of dots in a pattern that is becoming increasingly strange. As the narrator in the reference script so aptly put it, the oddities keep stacking up with this interstellar story. We have moved beyond a single anomaly into a sequence of interconnected, highly improbable events that demand an explanation, and the simple, "it's just a weird comet" explanation is beginning to feel strained. This leads to another, more philosophical analogy that I find myself returning to. It's the idea of the cosmic simulation. Let me state my base case, my default position. I do not believe we currently have definitive evidence of alien technology in our solar system. The principle of Occam's razor suggests we should stick with the simplest natural explanation until it is definitively ruled out. But the impression I get, the feeling that this sequence of events evokes, is something different. It feels as if the universe itself is running a test run or a simulation. It's as if some cosmic intelligence is laying out a scenario for us, piece by piece, to see how we react. The perceived goal of such a simulation would be to force humanity, a species often preoccupied with its own internal squabbles, to look up and recognize the need for preparedness. It's as if the universe is saying, here is an interstellar object, it's behaving strangely. Now here is a second object, also behaving strangely, appearing in a highly suspicious location. How will you respond? Will you dismiss it? Will you investigate it with all the resources you have? Will you unite as a species to understand what is happening in your own backyard? It feels like a cosmic drill, a dry run for a future event that might be the real deal. This is, of course, pure speculation, a way of framing a series of events that seem to defy simple, mundane explanation. For those who want to move from the realm of speculation to direct observation, let's walk through how you can find these objects in the night sky for yourself. We can use a wonderful piece of software called Stellarium, a free open-source planetarium for your computer. It allows us to see the sky from any location on Earth, at any time, and to track the movements of celestial bodies with incredible accuracy. First, let's set up our virtual viewing session. We will set the date and time to November 7th at 6 a.m. local time. The exact time will vary depending on your location, but the key is the viewing window. Because of where these objects are in relation to the Sun, they are currently best observed in the pre-dawn morning sky. You need to look for them in the brief period after they have risen above the eastern horizon, but before the rising sun washes out the sky. Now let's locate the objects. We will have the constellation outlines and labels turned on to help us navigate. First we can find C2025 V1 Atlas, our golden yellowish comet. You will find it in the constellation Leo, the lion, a very recognizable constellation with its distinctive sickle shape forming the lion's mane. Next we move to the main event. We will pan our view over to the neighbouring constellation of Virgo, the Maiden. Right in the middle of Virgo, you will find the faint point of light that is 3I Atlas. It will be moving very slowly from night to night against the fixed background of stars, and then, appearing almost on top of it, so close that they are nearly conjunct, you will find C2025 V1 Borosov. From our perspective on Earth, they are in almost the same line of sight. This visual proximity in our sky is the direct result of the three-dimensional alignment happening in space. Using software like Stellarium, you can watch this cosmic drama unfold for yourself night after night. There is a certain poetry to their location. All of this intense, mysterious activity is happening in the celestial space between the constellations of the Maiden, Virgo, and the Lion, Leo. These are ancient, powerful archetypes in human mythology, and now they form the backdrop for one of the most profound scientific mysteries of our time. Let's now conduct a full and frank review of all the imagery we have available for these objects, because a picture can be worth 1,000 words, but only if it's a clear one. We'll start with the recently released image of 3I Atlas from China's Tianwen probe. My assessment and the general consensus is that this image is deeply underwhelming. To be blunt, it looks like it was taken by a potato cam. The resolution is extremely low. The object appears as a small pixelated blob of light against a noisy background. It is almost meaningless for any kind of detailed scientific analysis. You can perhaps convince yourself that you see a slight elongation, a hint of material being pushed away from the central coma, but it's so indistinct that it could easily be an artifact of the camera's sensor or the image processing. It's a frustratingly poor look at such a critically important object. This is why the hopes of the scientific community are now pinned on NASA's awaited HiRISE imagery. HiRISE stands for High Resolution Imaging Science Experiment, and it is a truly powerful camera. It's not on a dedicated space telescope like Hubble. It's in orbit around Mars, aboard the Mars Reconnaissance Orbiter. From its vantage point, it can take incredibly detailed pictures of the Martian surface, and it can also be pointed outwards to look at other objects in the solar system. The reason for the delay in releasing this data has become a frustrating political issue. Following an appeal from a US congressperson who publicly asked NASA why this crucial data was being withheld, the agency responded. Their official statement is that they will release the imagery as soon as the current US government shutdown ends. Why the release of scientific data should be contingent on domestic political squabbles is a question I cannot answer. It is a roadblock that is hampering our ability to understand this once-in-a-lifetime event. The potential value of the HiRISE images is immense. If the resolution is as good as we hope, it could help us characterize the object's size directly, rather than just inferring it from its brightness. We might even be able to see its shape or get clues about its composition from the way it reflects light. However, there are some who are trying to temper expectations, suggesting that even with HiRISE's power, the image might not be significantly better than what we've already seen. Given the object's distance and faintness, we can only wait and see. In the meantime, the best recent image we have of 3I Atlas comes not from a space probe, but from a ground-based observatory in Spain. This image was taken on November 5th, just a day ago. The analysis of this image is telling. It shows a well-defined coma, the bright, fuzzy head of the object. The sunward direction is clearly marked, showing which way the sunlight is coming from. When we look at the anti-sunward direction, the direction a tail should be pointing, we see that the coma may be slightly elongated. There is a subtle stretching of the light in that direction, but it is far from a definitive structured tail. It's more of a slight teardrop shape than a long streaming banner. The ultimate conclusion from this new post-perihelion imagery is that no significant change has been observed in 3I Atlas after its intense solar encounter. It was battered by solar storms, baked by intense radiation at its closest approach to the sun, and yet it has emerged on the other side looking largely the same. It keeps, defying all expectations. It refuses to play by the rules we have written for comets. It remains an obstinate, beautiful, and deeply profound mystery. So let's try to summarize the extraordinary situation we find ourselves in. We have multiple anomalous objects currently transiting the inner regions of our solar system. The first, 3I Atlas, is an interstellar visitor that is far brighter than it should be and lacks the tail it should have. The second, C2025 V1 Borosov, is a newly discovered object of unknown origin that has appeared in a strategically perfect position between 3I Atlas and Earth, and it shares the same baffling lack of a tail. At the same time, we are experiencing a period of high solar and geomagnetic activity here on Earth. This activity appears to be linked to a series of cosmic alignments between the Sun, the Earth, and these visiting comets. We are not just observing these events from a distance, we are embedded within an energetic system that is being actively shaped and influenced by their presence. The connections are becoming too numerous and too precise to ignore. My commitment to you is that I will continue to track all of these developing stories with the utmost attention to detail. I will keep you updated on the latest observations of both 3I Atlas and C2025 V1 Borosov. I will monitor the space weather situation, the solar activity, and the geomagnetic conditions here on Earth, and I will bring you any new information as soon as it becomes available. This is a story that is evolving day by day, and we will follow it together. I've been your host, Stefan Burns. If you appreciate this work and want to support the channel, you might be interested in the shirt that I'm wearing. This is official channel merchandise, and it's available on my website at www.earthevolution.com store. The design is something I'm very proud of. It incorporates elements of sacred geometry, with a Fibonacci spiral placed directly over the solar plexus. The artwork on the back depicts the Great Pyramids of Giza in alignment with Jupiter, Venus, and the Moon. It's a design meant to evoke a sense of cosmic connection and ancient wisdom. The shirt itself is available in 2 colours, the white that you see me wearing, and also a very nice midnight blue. It comes in a full range of sizes, from small all the way up to 4XL, so there's a fit for everyone. Wearing it is a great way to show your support for this channel and to carry a piece of that cosmic energy with you. While you're on the website, you can also check out our other products. We have a range of holistic wellness items, including herbal tea blends that my father and I create and mix ourselves. Again, that website is www.earthevolution.com store. I also wanted to let you know about a recent podcast appearance that I think you'll enjoy. I was a guest on Matt Bell's channel for a very long, in-depth conversation. We talked for about 3.5 hours, and we covered everything. We did a deep dive on 3I Atlas, we talked about the Earth's magnetic field and the ongoing pole flip. We explored topics of consciousness, the connection between earthquakes and cosmic events, and so much more. If you're looking for that full comprehensive download of all the topics I cover here, in a long-form conversational style, I highly recommend you check it out. Thank you all so much for watching, for your curiosity, and for your engagement with these profound topics. It is a privilege to explore these mysteries with you. I am wishing each and every single one of you well. Please take care of yourselves and each other during these intense and transformative times. I will see you all in the next video. Actually, you know what? No, let's not wait for the next video. There is more to discuss, more to unpack right now, and I feel it would be a disservice to leave these threads hanging. Signing off feels premature when the story is accelerating this quickly. The facts we've laid out are the what, but we need to spend more time on the so what and the what if. Let's push deeper, because the implications of what we are witnessing are simply too profound to put on hold. What we've discussed so far is the evidence, the collection of strange data points. But the real story, the one that will echo through our future, is about the meaning we draw from it. Let's start with the most provocative and perhaps the most important question, the one that hangs over this entire saga like a silent, invisible mothership. Are we looking at technology? Are 3I Atlas and its apparent companion, C2025 V1 Borosov, artifacts of an extraterrestrial intelligence? We touched on this, but let's give this hypothesis the serious consideration it deserves, because the evidence is forcing our hand. For decades, our search for extraterrestrial intelligence, the SETI program, has been based on listening. We have pointed our radio telescopes at the heavens, listening for a signal, a deliberate broadcast from a distant civilization. But what if that was the wrong approach? What if the first credible evidence of intelligence beyond Earth wasn't a sound, but a physical object? This possibility directly confronts one of the great paradoxes of science, the Fermi paradox. The physicist Enrico Fermi famously asked, given the vastness of the universe, the billions of stars in our galaxy alone, and the trillions of galaxies beyond that, where is everybody? Statistically, the universe should be teeming with life, and at least some of that life should have developed into spacefaring technological civilizations. Yet, we see no evidence of them. The sky's silent. This is often called the Great Silence. Interstellar objects like 3I Atlas offer a potential solution to this paradox. Perhaps civilizations don't use noisy, inefficient radio waves to communicate across the vastness of space. Perhaps they send probes, quiet, resilient, intelligent probes that can travel for millennia, gathering data, observing, and perhaps even waiting. If this is the case, then 3I Atlas isn't just an anomaly, it's a potential answer. It could be the very thing we've been looking for, just in a form we weren't expecting. We were listening for a whisper on the wind when we should have been looking for a ship on the cosmic ocean. The appearance of C2025 V1 Borosov elevates this hypothesis from a possibility to a compelling scenario. If 3I Atlas is a probe, its behaviour makes a certain kind of sense. It survived a close pass of our Sun, not because it's a special kind of rock, but because it was engineered to. Its anomalous brightness isn't from outgassing, it's from something else entirely. Perhaps it was reorienting reflective surfaces, or powering up systems, or simply has a material composition that interacts with sunlight in a way we don't understand. In this scenario, V1 Borosov is not a coincidence. It is a deployment. Its sudden appearance, its smaller size, its dimmer profile, and its strategically perfect location between the mothership and the target of interest, Earth, is the textbook definition of a reconnaissance drone. It was launched from 3I Atlas to get a closer look. Its trajectory, shooting up from below the ecliptic, might have been a deliberate maneuver to avoid the densest areas of debris in our solar system's plane and to get a different observational angle. The lack of a tail is not a mystery, it's a design feature. Probes don't need to sublimate ice. They run on power systems we can only dream of. This line of thinking leads us to another related concept, the zoo hypothesis. This is another potential solution to the Fermi paradox. It suggests that the reason we don't see evidence of alien civilizations is because they are deliberately hiding from us. Earth and humanity are part of a cosmic preserve, a zoo or a nature park. The advanced civilizations of the galaxy are the zookeepers, observing us, studying our development, but adhering to a strict non-interference policy. They watch from a distance, perhaps from cloaked observation posts, ensuring that our natural evolution is not contaminated by their presence. If the zoo hypothesis is true, then the arrival of 3I Atlas and V1 Borosov could represent a profound change in that policy. It might not be a first contact scenario in the way we imagine, with ships landing on the White House lawn. It could be a much more subtle, gradual process. Perhaps the zookeepers have decided that humanity is reaching a certain level of maturity, or perhaps a certain level of crisis, where a little nudge is required. They wouldn't reveal themselves directly, as that would be too disruptive. Instead, they would send something that is deliberately ambiguous, an object that is just strange enough to make us question everything, but not so obvious that it forces a conclusion. They give us a puzzle, a cosmic riddle, to see if we're smart enough, and united enough to solve it. The object's tailless nature and strange brightness are the clues. The alignment is the punctuation. The message is simple. We are here. Look up. Think bigger. This brings us back to that other, more philosophical framework, the cosmic simulation. The idea that our reality is not the base reality, but a highly sophisticated, computed simulation is an old one. But it has gained traction in recent years with thinkers like Nick Bostrom and Elon Musk. If we are living in a simulation, then the programmers or operators of that simulation could, in theory, insert any event they choose into our reality. In this context, the entire 3I Atlas saga feels like a new software patch being rolled out, a new module in the program designed to test the system's inhabitants. The events are just a little too neat, a little too cinematic. The same person who discovered the second interstellar object discovers this new, crucial piece of the puzzle. The new object appears at the most dramatic moment possible. The alignments with Earth are precise and meaningful. It feels less like the random chaos of the natural universe and more like the deliberate narrative construction of a storyteller. What would be the purpose of such a simulated event? Perhaps it is, as we speculated, a test of our species' preparedness and unity. Can we overcome political gridlock to release vital scientific data? Can we collaborate internationally to study these objects? Can we move beyond fear and superstition to a rational scientific understanding? Or perhaps the goal is something deeper, something related to consciousness itself. Many spiritual traditions and some frontier science theories suggest that our collective consciousness can influence physical reality. The idea is that our shared thoughts, beliefs, and emotions create a field that can interact with the material world. If this is true, then perhaps the 3i Atlas event is designed to be a focal point for our collective attention. By presenting us with a profound, shared mystery, the universe, or the simulation, is forcing us all to look in the same direction and ask the same fundamental questions. Who are we? Are we alone? What is our place in the cosmos? This act of unified, focused consciousness could itself be the goal. The event may be a catalyst designed to trigger a global awakening, a shift in our perception of ourselves and our world. It's a radical idea, but in the face of such radical anomalies, all ideas must be on the table. Now let's pivot from the philosophical back to the physical. If we set aside the alien and simulation hypotheses for a moment and assume these are natural objects, we are still left with a profound scientific crisis. Our models are failing. Let's dig deeper into the physics of what these objects might be made of, because rock and ice is clearly not the full story. The combination of high brightness, minimal non-gravitational acceleration, and a lack of a tail points to a composition that is both highly reflective and highly resilient to heat. What natural materials fit this description? The high carbon content detected around 3i Atlas is a major clue. Carbon is an incredibly versatile element. In the form of soot or charcoal, it's one of the darkest substances known, but in other forms it can be something else entirely. Consider the possibility of exotic carbon allotropes. We are all familiar with graphite and diamond, but scientists have discovered or theorized many other forms. What if 3i Atlas is not just carbonaceous, but is composed of something like graphene or carbon nanotubes on a massive scale? Graphene is a single layer of carbon atoms arranged in a honeycomb lattice. It is incredibly strong, lightweight, and has unique thermal and electrical properties. A large object composed of or coated in a graphene-like material would be extraordinarily resistant to breaking apart under the sun's tidal forces and heat. It might not outgas in the traditional sense, but intense solar radiation could excite the material itself, causing it to glow or release energy in a way that we are misinterpreting as a simple increase in reflected light. This could account for the excess brightness without the presence of a dusty, icy tail. The object wouldn't be sublimating, it would be fluorescing or phosphorescing on a planetary scale. It would be a solid-state comet, behaving according to principles of material science that we have only just begun to explore in our labs. Another possibility is that the object is metallic, but not in the way we typically think of asteroids. Some models of planetary formation in other star systems suggest that objects could form that are rich in aluminum or other highly reflective metals. An object with a polished metallic surface would have a very high albedo, meaning it reflects a lot of sunlight. This could explain its intrinsic brightness. It would also be highly resistant to the sun's heat. It wouldn't outgas, it would simply heat up and re-radiate that energy as infrared light. Our current models for calculating magnitude are based on the average reflectivity of asteroids and comets in our own solar system. If 3i Atlas comes from a system where the building blocks are fundamentally different, our models would naturally fail, and fail dramatically. This brings us to the electromagnetic connection, the idea that these objects are not just passive travellers, but are actively interacting with the sun's magnetic field. This is a controversial idea, often associated with the electric universe theory, but some of the correlations are becoming difficult to dismiss. Let's try to understand the proposed mechanism in simple terms. The sun is not just a ball of hot gas. It is a massive ball of plasma, a state of matter where electrons are stripped from their atoms, creating a sea of charged particles. This spinning ball of plasma generates an immense magnetic field, which extends far out into space, carried by the solar wind. This is called the interplanetary magnetic field. Planets and comets are not moving through a vacuum. They are moving through this dynamic magnetized plasma. The theory suggests that a comet, especially one with a conductive core or a dense coma, can create a circuit with the sun. Imagine the comet as one terminal and a region on the sun, like a sunspot, as the other. The plasma of the solar wind acts as the wire connecting them. As the comet moves through the interplanetary magnetic field, it can generate an electrical potential, much like a generator does. This can lead to a flow of electrical current along the magnetic field lines connecting the comet back to the sun. If this current is strong enough, it could be what triggers solar flares. A sunspot is a region where magnetic energy is stored and tangled up. A sudden influx of energy from an external circuit connected to a comet could be the trigger that causes that stored magnetic energy to be explosively released in the form of a flare or a coronal mass ejection. This would explain why the flares seem to be directed towards the aligning comets. The gun is the sunspot, but the finger on the trigger is the comet. The presence of C2025 V1 Borosov so close to the Sun would, in this model, be like adding a powerful capacitor or resistor into the inner solar system's circuit. Its proximity and composition would significantly alter the electrical environment around the Sun, potentially explaining why the solar activity has been so sustained. It's no longer just one object, a 6-lemon providing a trigger, but now a second, closer object, V1 Borosov, keeping the circuit active and energized. This is frontier science, and it's not widely accepted, but it provides a framework that, unlike the standard model, actually seems to fit the growing list of observational evidence. Let's also perform some orbital forensics. Where did 3i Atlas come from, and where is it going? Its hyperbolic trajectory is our only clue. By precisely measuring its path, astronomers can calculate its incoming velocity and direction. This vector points back to a region of the sky, the object's radiant. The radiant for 3i Atlas is in the constellation of Aquila, the eagle. The next step is to look at the stars in that region and see if any of them were in the right place at the right time to have been the object's home star. This is incredibly difficult. Stars are not stationary, they are all moving relative to each other. You have to rewind the clock, calculating the past positions of millions of stars to see if any of them had a close encounter with the trajectory of 3i Atlas, thousands or millions of years ago. So far, no definitive home star has been identified. The calculations are complex and have large error bars. But this lack of an obvious origin is itself interesting. It could mean it was ejected from its home system with such force that its path is hard to trace, or it could mean it has been travelling for an incredibly long time, perhaps originating from a star that is now very far from its point of origin. Or, if we entertain the probe hypothesis, its trajectory could have been deliberately chosen to be anonymous, to not point back to its home base. And what about V1 Borosov? Its orbit is still being refined, but it has been classified as a comet, which implies that astronomers believe it originated within our solar system, likely from the Oort cloud. The Oort cloud is a theoretical immense sphere of icy bodies surrounding our solar system at a vast distance. Occasionally, a gravitational nudge from a passing star can send one of these bodies falling into the inner solar system, where we see it as a new comet. However, the initial classification is based on a very short observation arc. As we gather more data, it is possible that its orbit will also be found to be hyperbolic, meaning it too is an interstellar visitor. If that turns out to be the case, the situation becomes exponentially more incredible. It would mean that two independent interstellar objects, both sharing the same bizarre tailless characteristic, arrived in our solar system at roughly the same time and on paths that created a stunning alignment with our planet. The odds against such a coincidence would be, for all practical purposes, astronomical. It would almost force us to abandon the idea of coincidence altogether and accept the idea of deliberate arrangement. Let's broaden our perspective even further and look for echoes of these events in our own history and mythology. Are these tailless wonders truly unprecedented? Or have we seen things like this before, in an age before we had the scientific tools to understand them? Sifting through historical records is tricky. Ancient observers didn't have the same vocabulary or framework as we do. A comet was often just a hairy star, a bad omen in the sky. However, there are intriguing accounts. Seneca the Younger, a Roman philosopher, wrote about comets in his work Naturalis Questiones. He noted that some comets were different, appearing as sharp, star-like points of light without the usual diffuse tail. He cited the observations of Greek astronomers who debated whether these were a different class of object altogether. There are also Chinese records, the most extensive in the ancient world, that describe guest stars, which appeared suddenly, some of which were described as broom stars, with tails, and others which were not. Is it possible that 3i Atlas is not the first of its kind to visit us, but merely the first that we have been able to properly track with modern technology? Perhaps our ancestors saw similar objects and recorded them in the only way they could, as enigmatic portents in the heavens. This brings us to the symbolism of the constellations that form the backdrop for this drama, Virgo and Leo. The script mentioned them, but let's explore their archetypal significance more deeply. Across countless cultures, these two constellations have held profound meaning. Leo, the lion, is almost universally a symbol of royalty, strength, courage, and the sun. It represents the heart, the will, the power of the individual. It is the king of the zodiac. Virgo, the maiden, is a more complex archetype. She is often associated with the harvest, with purity, with the earth itself. In many myths, she is a goddess figure, like Isis or Demeter, who represents the hidden wisdom of nature, service, and the meticulous analysis of details. She is the priestess, the healer, the keeper of sacred knowledge. So we have this incredible series of events, these profound anomalies that challenge our understanding of the universe, all taking place in the celestial territory between the lion and the maiden. If you were to interpret this symbolically, as our ancestors surely would have, what would it mean? It could be seen as a cosmic call for a new kind of leadership, a blending of the qualities of Leo and Virgo. A call for a leadership that combines the courage and heart of the lion with the wisdom, service, and attention to detail of the maiden. It could be a message that to overcome the challenges ahead, humanity needs to lead with both a strong heart and a wise mind, balancing power with humility and action with careful analysis. This symbolic interpretation resonates with the very real, practical challenges these objects present to us. Our response to this cosmic mystery has, so far, been a perfect and unfortunate illustration of our current human condition. We have incredible technology, the ability to see these objects, to calculate their orbits, to analyze their light. But we are hampered by the very human problems of division, bureaucracy, and a lack of unified purpose. The delay in the release of the NASA HiRISE data because of a government shutdown is a staggering example of this dysfunction. A potential once-in-a-species event is unfolding in our skies, an event that could answer the most fundamental questions of our existence, and our ability to get the best possible look at it is being held hostage by political infighting. It is a tragic comedy. It highlights the disconnect between our technological capability and our social and political maturity. We have the tools of gods, but the squabbles of a kindergarten playground. The same can be said for the slow release of data from other national space agencies. In an ideal world, the discovery of such an object would trigger an immediate global open-source collaboration. All data from every telescope on Earth and in space would be shared in real time with the entire scientific community. We would be united in a common purpose, a shared quest for knowledge. Instead, the data trickles out, sometimes used for national prestige, sometimes caught in bureaucratic nets. This is where the role of the citizen scientist, the independent observer, becomes so critically important. Remember, this new object, C2025 V1 Borosov, was not discovered by a major space agency. It was found by Gennady Borosov, the same dedicated amateur astronomer who found the last major interstellar object. This is not a coincidence. It is a testament to the power of the passionate individual. The professionals, with their limited telescope time allocated by committees, can sometimes miss what is right in front of them. The amateur, driven by pure curiosity and a love for the sky, can scan the heavens with a freedom and dedication that often yields incredible results. In this new era, we cannot afford to wait for official institutions to give us the answers. We must all become part of the process. We must support independent observers. We must demand open access to data. We must cultivate a culture of scientific literacy and critical thinking that allows us to analyze the information for ourselves. The internet, for all its faults, allows for an unprecedented level of global collaboration. The images from alpha rats on Twitter, the discussions on astronomy forums, the analysis shared on channels like this one, this is the new front line of discovery. So, let's ask the question directly. What should we do next? Assuming these objects continue on their current paths, what is the appropriate response for the human race? First, we must observe. We need to point every instrument we have at both 3I Atlas and V1 Borosov. We need optical telescopes, radio telescopes, infrared and ultraviolet. We need to analyze their light, their magnetic fields, their interaction with the solar wind with a level of intensity we have never before applied to a celestial object. We should be repurposing satellites, launching new, rapid response probes if possible, to get a closer look. Second, we must think. We need to bring together not just astronomers, but physicists, chemists, material scientists, engineers, and even philosophers and sociologists. We need to create a global brain trust to work on this problem, to explore every possibility from the most mundane to the most extraordinary. We need to be brave enough to question our most fundamental assumptions about the universe. And third, we must prepare. Whether these objects are natural or artificial, they are a wake-up call. They are a reminder that the universe is a dynamic and unpredictable place. They highlight our vulnerability and our isolation. They should be the catalyst for us to finally become a true spacefaring species. We need to invest in planetary defense to protect ourselves from future impacts. We need to build the infrastructure to explore our own solar system more thoroughly. We need to become the kind of species that, the next time an object like 3I Atlas visits, we don't just watch it from afar, we go out to meet it. This is the challenge that has been laid before us, written in the language of light and gravity across the canvas of the night sky. It is a test of our intelligence, our unity, and our will to survive and grow. The oddities keep stacking up, the alignments keep getting more precise, and the stakes keep getting higher. We are living in the middle of what may be the most important story in human history. The great silence of the Fermi paradox may finally be breaking, not with a shout, but with the arrival of a silent, tailless, and profoundly mysterious messenger. The question is no longer just, are we alone? The question now is, are we ready? Ready to listen, ready to learn, and ready to take our place in the cosmic community. Every piece of data, every new image, every turn in this story brings us closer to an answer. The universe is speaking to us. The responsibility falls to each and every one of us to pay attention. Thank you for staying with me to explore these deeper implications. Now, more than ever, keep your eyes on the skies and keep an open mind. The greatest discoveries are still ahead, but even that question, are we ready, might be too simple. It's a question that places humanity at the center of the story, assuming we are the ones being tested, the ones being judged. It frames this entire cosmic event as a final exam for our species. But what if that's only half of the equation? What if this isn't a monologue from the universe, but the beginning of a dialogue? A dialogue requires two active participants. This might not just be a test for humanity. It could be a test for whatever intelligence may have sent these objects as well. This could be their first attempt at a new kind of contact, and our response will determine their next move. This forces us to consider a concept we might call cosmic etiquette, the unwritten rules of first contact. If you are an advanced spacefaring civilization, how do you approach a developing world without causing irreparable harm? You can't just land a fleet of ships in every major city. The cultural shock, the panic, the potential for conflict would be catastrophic. It would be like a modern-day aircraft carrier appearing in the Roman Forum. You would break the civilization you were trying to meet. So you would need a more subtle approach. You would need a method that is deniable, one that allows the developing species to discover you at their own pace, on their own terms. You would send something like 3I Atlas, an object that is profoundly strange, but not definitively artificial. You give them clues, the anomalous brightness, the lack of a tail, the resilient composition, but you don't give them the answer. You let their own scientists debate and wonder. Then, to escalate the process, to add a sense of urgency and intention, you send a second object, V1 Borosov. You place it in a position that is too perfect to be a coincidence. You create an alignment that forces the developing species to see the connection. You are, in effect, knocking on the door, but very, very gently. You're waiting to see if anyone is home, and more importantly, if they are capable of answering the knock politely. Our response, therefore, is not just a test of our readiness. It is our side of this first, tentative, interstellar conversation. Silence, fear, or aggression would be an answer. Unity, curiosity, and a focused attempt to communicate would be a very different answer. This leads us to a critical question. Why now? Of all the millions of years of human history, why would this contact, this test, be happening in the early 21st century? The answer may lie in another concept from the Fermi paradox known as the Great Filter. The Great Filter is a theoretical barrier that is incredibly difficult for life to overcome. It could be the leap from single-celled to multi-celled organisms, the development of intelligence, or, most ominously, the period after a civilization discovers technology powerful enough to destroy itself. Many believe that this final filter is where most intelligent species meet their end. They discover nuclear power, they alter their climate, they create artificial plagues, and they wipe themselves out before they can ever become a stable, spacefaring civilization. From an outside observer's perspective, humanity is currently in the heart of its great filter. We have nuclear weapons capable of ending civilization in an afternoon. We are actively and rapidly changing our planet's climate. We are developing artificial intelligence and genetic engineering technologies whose long-term consequences are unknown. We are, to put it bluntly, a planetary adolescent playing with matches. Perhaps this is what tripped a cosmic alarm bell. Perhaps an ancient network of observers, or zookeepers, has a protocol for species that reach this critical, self-destructive phase. They don't intervene directly, that might violate their own rules, but they send a catalyst. They send a profound, undeniable mystery that is so large, so all-encompassing, that it has the potential to shock the adolescent species out of its petty squabbles and force it to look at the bigger picture. The arrival of 3I Atlas might be a desperate attempt to get us to grow up before we burn the house down. It's a cosmic intervention designed to remind us that the universe is far larger and more wondrous than our terrestrial conflicts. Of course, the motivation might be less philosophical and more practical. An advanced civilization would still be bound by the laws of physics and the need for resources. 3I Atlas could be exactly what it appears to be, a massive survey ship. Its mission could be to chart promising star systems, and ours is simply the latest on its list. Our sun is a stable, long-lived star. Our planet is a rare Class M world, teeming with liquid water, a rich atmosphere, and an abundance of complex biology. To a galactic surveyor, Earth would be a prime piece of real estate, a jackpot of scientific data. In this scenario, V1 Borosov is not just a probe, it's a specialized drone with a specific mission. Its trajectory, bringing it much closer to the Sun and in alignment with Earth, is perfect for deploying instruments. It might be sniffing our atmosphere, analysing its chemical composition for signs of industrial pollutants or biological markers. It could be mapping our planet's magnetic field, or even attempting to scan our global communications grid. The lack of a tail is not just a mystery, it's a sign of clean, efficient engineering. You don't want your own outgassing to contaminate the samples you're trying to collect. The anomalous brightness of the mothership, 3I Atlas, could be the energy signature of its powerful systems processing the flood of data being sent back by its drone. They are not talking to us. They are scanning us, cataloguing us, adding Earth to a galactic database. There's an even more profound and ancient possibility we must consider, one that connects directly to the deepest questions of our origin. This is the theory of directed panspermia. The basic idea of panspermia is that life did not originate on Earth, but was carried here from space, perhaps on a comet or asteroid. Directed panspermia takes this a step further, suggesting that this seeding was not an accident, but a deliberate act by an advanced intelligence. They sent probes containing the building blocks of life, or perhaps even fully formed microorganisms, to promising young planets across the galaxy. If this were true, then all life on Earth, including humanity, would be the result of this ancient seeding program. We would be, in a very real sense, their children. In this context, the arrival of 3I Atlas is not a first contact, it is a return. It is the gardeners coming back to check on the garden they planted billions of years ago. They would want to see how their experiment has turned out. Has it produced intelligence? Has that intelligence become self-aware? Is it on the verge of reaching out into the cosmos itself? V1 Borosov would be a biological probe, perhaps attempting to collect atmospheric samples to see if our DNA has any recognizable markers that match their own ancient templates. The message in this case is not for us to read, but for them. We are the message. If these objects are indeed engineered artifacts, then their very design might contain a message for us, one written not in language, but in the universal tongue of mathematics and physics. This is what we should be looking for. Carl Sagan, in his novel Contact, imagined a message hidden in the digits of pi. A truly advanced intelligence would understand that the laws of physics and the constants of mathematics are the same everywhere. That is the common ground, the cosmic Rosetta Stone. We should be scrutinizing every number associated with these objects. The script mentioned that 3I Atlas is 1.4 magnitudes brighter than expected. Could the number 1.4 or its more precise value be significant? Is it related to a physical constant? What about the orbital periods, the inclinations, the exact timing of the perihelions of both 3I Atlas and V1 Borosov? If you take the ratio of their orbital energies, or the precise time interval between their closest approaches to the Sun, do you get a recognizable mathematical constant like pi, or Euler's number, or the golden ratio? What if the excess brightness isn't constant? What if it's pulsing, or changing in a structured way? If we could monitor its light curve with extreme precision, we might find a signal embedded within it, a series of flashes encoding prime numbers, for example, which is a classic proposed signature of intelligence. Or perhaps the signal is not in the visible light spectrum. We should be using our radio telescopes to listen intently to these objects, not for a broad, powerful broadcast, but for a tight, focused beam. The upcoming alignment on November 16th, when Earth, the Sun, and V1 Borosov are in a line, would be the perfect opportunity for such a targeted transmission. It is the moment when the sender would know exactly where to point their transmitter. Are we listening? This line of inquiry forces us to confront the immense psychological impact of such a discovery. The script touched on this, but the reality of what is called ontological shock would reshape our world forever. Ontological shock is the state of disorientation and terror that follows the realization that your core beliefs about the nature of reality are profoundly wrong. For our entire existence, humanity has operated under one of two assumptions. Either we are alone in the universe or a divine supernatural power created us for a special purpose. The confirmation of a tangible, technological, non-human intelligence would shatter both of these pillars at once. It would prove that we are not alone and that we are not necessarily special. We would be just one of likely many intelligent species in the cosmos. The psychological impact on the average person would be immense. It could lead to a new renaissance of art, science, and philosophy, as humanity embraces its new, larger context. But it could also lead to widespread despair, a sense of cosmic insignificance, or a terrifying new kind of xenophobia. Our entire identity as a species is built on being the sole proprietors of this planet. Learning that there are new, older, and vastly more powerful landlords in the galactic neighborhood would be a difficult adjustment. The world's religions would face their greatest crisis since the Copernican revolution. When Copernicus and Galileo proved that the Earth was not the center of the universe, it caused a theological earthquake. This would be 1,000 times more powerful. Some faiths might adapt, suggesting that these aliens are simply another of God's creations. But for others, whose doctrines are built on the unique relationship between God and humanity on Earth, the existence of other intelligent moral beings in the universe could be an insurmountable theological problem. We would see new religions spring up overnight, some worshipping the visitors, others demonizing them. The spiritual landscape of our planet would be irrevocably altered. And this brings us to the geopolitical ramifications, which would be immediate and severe. The script correctly identifies the current squabbling over data as a symptom of our dysfunction. But imagine if we had proof that 3I Atlas was a piece of technology. It would instantly become the single most valuable object in human history. The nation or corporation that could first make contact with it, or retrieve a piece of it, would gain an unimaginable technological advantage. The secrets it might hold, about energy production, materials science, interstellar travel, artificial intelligence, would be worth more than all the gold on Earth. This would not unite humanity. It would almost certainly ignite a new, terrifying Cold War. The race to 3I Atlas would make the 20th century space race look like a friendly school sports day. Nations would pour trillions of dollars into their space programs. We would see the weaponization of space on a scale we can barely imagine, as nations try to secure the object for themselves and deny access to their rivals. Who gets to speak for Earth? Who controls the message? Who owns the technology? These questions would dominate global politics, and a single misstep, a single act of aggression or mistrust, could lead to a hot war right here on Earth, all while the object of our conflict sails silently on, a testament to an intelligence that has presumably overcome such self-destructive tendencies. Let's return to the strange behavior of our Sun, and consider a more disturbing interpretation. We have been assuming that the solar activity linked to these objects is an accidental byproduct of their presence. But what if it's deliberate? What if the objects are not just interacting with the Sun, but actively manipulating it? an intelligence capable of interstellar travel would surely have a profound understanding of stellar physics. They might be able to influence a star's magnetic field in ways we can't yet comprehend. Why would they do this? One dark possibility is that it's a form of planetary defense or a weapon system. Imagine the probe's mission parameters. It enters a new solar system and detects a planet with a developing technological civilization. It then scans for certain threat signatures. Perhaps it detects the radiation from our nuclear tests, the chemical signature of our industrial pollution, or the electronic chatter of our global military networks. If these signatures cross a certain threshold, the probe might be programmed to execute a defensive protocol. This protocol wouldn't involve firing lasers or missiles. That would be too crude, too direct. A far more elegant solution would be to use the star itself as the weapon. By carefully manipulating the sun's magnetic field, the probe could trigger a massive targeted coronal mass ejection, a Carrington-level event or even larger, aimed directly at Earth. Such an event would not harm the biosphere directly, but it would completely destroy our technological civilization. It would collapse our power grids, fry our satellites, and wipe out our global communications. It would send us back to a pre-industrial age in a matter of hours. It would be a way to neuter a potentially dangerous young species without having to fire a single shot. In this chilling scenario, the solar storms are not a coincidence. They are a warning shot. They are a demonstration of a capability that could be used against us if we are deemed a threat. This possibility, however remote, changes the stakes entirely. It means that our actions right now, in these coming days and weeks, could be critical. The upcoming alignment of V1 Borosov with the Earth and the Sun on November 16th is not just a passive observational opportunity, it is a moment of decision. It is the perfect window for a focused transmission. If this is a test, then this is the moment we must provide our answer. So what should that answer be? It must be a message of peace, of intelligence, and of unity. We should be using our most powerful radio telescopes, like the Arecibo Observatory was, or the FAST telescope in China, or the Allen Telescope Array. We should coordinate them, creating a global network to transmit a single, powerful, coherent signal aimed directly at V1 Borosov. The message should not be in any human language. It must be in the universal language of mathematics and science. We could transmit a sequence of prime numbers, a graphical representation of the hydrogen atom, or a map of our solar system. We could even include the value of pi. This is the classic SETI playbook for what a first message should contain. It is a signal that says, we are here, we are intelligent, we understand the universe, and we come in peace. Sending such a message would be a monumental step. It would require an unprecedented level of international scientific and political cooperation, and it would need to happen in the next few days. It would be an admission that we believe these objects are more than just comets, a gamble based on the mounting anomalous evidence, but not sending a message is also a choice. To remain silent, to continue to squabble and hide our data, is to send a message of a different kind. It is a message of a divided, immature, and potentially fearful species. If the visitors are watching, which message do we want them to receive? This is the precipice on which we now stand. The story of Three-Eye Atlas and C2025 V1 Borosov has moved beyond a simple astronomical curiosity. It has become a mirror, reflecting our own hopes, our fears, our potential, and our failings. These silent, tailless travellers have asked us the most profound question imaginable, just by showing up. They have forced us to look up from our small world and contemplate the infinite. They have given us a reason to work together, a mystery to solve that is bigger than any one nation or ideology. The final conclusion of this saga has not yet been written. We are writing it right now, with every decision we make. The greatest discoveries may indeed be still ahead, but they are not guaranteed. They depend on what we do in this moment. The greatest decisions of our time as a species are now upon us. They are not in the future. They are here, now, and we must find the wisdom and the courage to make them together. The universe has knocked on our door. It is time to decide how we are going to answer. But how do we answer? What does that even look like? It's a question that sounds simple, but it is perhaps the most complex challenge our species has ever faced. It's one thing to say we should transmit a message of peace and intelligence. It's another thing entirely to actually do it. The moment we decide to move from being passive listeners of the cosmos to active speakers, we cross a monumental threshold. This is the great debate between SETI, the search for extraterrestrial intelligence, and METI, which stands for Messaging Extraterrestrial Intelligence. For decades, this debate has been a quiet academic affair. But with 3i Atlas and V1 Borosov in our backyard, it has suddenly become the most urgent and practical question in the world. Who gets to decide the content of the message? Who speaks for Earth? Is it a committee of scientists, the United Nations, a single powerful nation that happens to have the right transmitter? What if the message we send, full of our best intentions, is misinterpreted? Our depictions of human anatomy could be seen as a biological threat. A map of our solar system could be seen as an invitation to an invasion. Every bit of information we send is a piece of intelligence about our capabilities, our biology, our location, and our potential vulnerabilities. The act of messaging is an act of profound and irreversible self-revelation. This is where we must confront a darker, more terrifying possibility, another potential solution to the Fermi paradox. It is known as the dark forest hypothesis. This idea, drawn from the science fiction novel of the same name by Liu Cixin, posits that the universe is not an empty and silent place, but a dark forest teeming with hidden hunters. In this forest, survival is everything. Every civilization is a potential threat to every other civilization, because the resources in the universe are finite, and another species' technological expansion could mean your own extinction. The logic of the dark forest is chillingly simple. Because of the vast distances between stars, true communication is almost impossible. You can never be sure of another civilization's true intentions. Are they peaceful explorers, or are they ruthless conquerors hiding behind a friendly message? Since you can't be sure, the safest possible strategy for any civilization is to remain silent and hidden. You never, ever reveal your location. And if you happen to detect the location of another civilization, the safest strategy is to eliminate them immediately, before they have a chance to eliminate you. The universe in this model is silent not because it is empty, but because the ones who talk are the first ones to get killed. Now look again at 3i Atlas and V1 Borosov through this terrifying lens. Their behaviour suddenly takes on a new, more sinister meaning. Why are they tailless? Because a bright, gassy tail is like a giant neon sign in the dark forest screaming, "Here I am!" An advanced, survival-conscious civilization would build probes that are as stealthy as possible. They would be dark, non-reflective, and would emit as little waste material as possible. They would move through the cosmos like silent submarines, not like flashy cruise ships. The objects we are seeing might not be messengers of peace. They could be the silent, patient scouts of a hunter. In this context, our decision to transmit a message becomes a gamble of existential proportions. Are we answering a friendly knock on the door, or are we lighting a bonfire in the middle of the dark forest, alerting every predator for light years in every direction that a young, naive, and potentially delicious meal has just announced its location? This is the ultimate risk of METI. We could be betting the entire future of humanity on a single coin toss, assuming the visitors are the benevolent gardeners and not the ruthless hunters. This debate would instantly tear our world apart. It would create a global political and social schism far deeper than anything we have ever experienced. On one side, you would have the contact faction, arguing that this is a once-in-a-species opportunity, that the pursuit of knowledge is worth the risk, and that hiding in fear is no way for a species to live. On the other side, you would have the silent faction, arguing with equal passion that transmitting any signal is an act of planetary suicide, a reckless endangerment of every man, woman, and child on Earth for the sake of scientific curiosity. Every nation would have to choose a side. This wouldn't be about capitalism versus communism, or democracy versus autocracy. It would be about the most fundamental question of survival. It's easy to imagine the UN Security Council being locked in a permanent deadlocked debate. It's easy to imagine nations threatening military action against any other nation that attempts to transmit a signal unilaterally. We would be on the brink of a world war over whether or not to say hello. And while we debate, while we paralyze ourselves with our own fear and division, the objects themselves continue their silent journey. The clock is ticking towards the November 16th alignment. Our inaction becomes its own kind of answer. by failing to organise a coherent, unified response, whether that response is to transmit or to listen with every instrument we have. We're sending a message of chaos. We're telling the visitors, whether they are gardeners or hunters, that the dominant species on this planet is fractured, disorganised, and incapable of acting in its own collective interest. That, in itself, is a piece of information that could be very valuable to an outside observer. Perhaps this is the true nature of the test. It's not about whether we can solve a cosmic riddle or send a clever message. The test is to see if we can overcome our own nature. Can we set aside our differences, our ancient fears, and our political games to face a cosmic reality? The ultimate challenge might not be in answering the knock on the door. It might be in simply agreeing, as a species, that we hear a knock at all. Right now, many are still trying to convince themselves it's just the wind, just a weird rock, just anything other than what it so powerfully appears to be. The great filter for humanity may not be nuclear war or climate change, but this, our ability to collectively perceive and respond to a reality that is larger than ourselves. The universe is waiting for our answer, but we're still busy arguing about whether or not the question has even been asked.